Bueno, con un poco de retraso empezamos, motivado por la tecnología. Estoy seguro que la mayor parte de los chavales y chavalas lo hubiesen solucionado en menos tiempo, pero los que avanzan la tecnología a veces sucumben a las complejidades de la tecnología. En cualquier caso, vamos a empezar el acto con unas palabras de bienvenida del director de Kutxa, Carlos Ruiz. Carlos Ruiz tiene la palabra.
María Antonia Ugariz, sailburu ordea anderea, Dr. Heinrich Rohrer, Kroto, Pedro Miguel Echenique, gure ohoro eskolaguna, irakasle, ikasle eta lagun guztiok, egunon, muy buenos días a todos. Izan zaitezte ongi etorriak gure kutsagune, gure zientziagune honetara. Hemen gaur espero dut lortuko degula zientzia eta esperientzia bat izatea. Duela orain 10 urte, erabaki genuen zientziagune desberdin bat egitea, eta toki honetan dakizuenez debekatua dago ez ukitzea. Urte askotan leloa hori izan da, debekatua dagola ez ukitzea. Here's forbidden not to touch. Baina esaera hori gaur osatuko dugu beste batekin. Debekatua dago ez galdetzea. Today we said also it's forbidden not to ask. De las numerosas y famosas citas de Albert Einstein, que le he oído muchas veces citar a mi amigo Pedro, que hoy ha venido en camiseta, lo cual ya da un cierto relajo al acto y a los propios científicos. Pedro, nuestro vasco más universal, y no solamente por sus logros y cualidades como científico, una de esas frases que quiero citar hoy aquí sería la de cada día sabemos más y entendemos menos. Como digo, es una frase de Einstein, every day we know more and we understand less. Pedro, Heinrich, Sir Harald, queremos que hoy nos ayudéis no a saber, sino a entender. Today we want from you to help to us to enjoy understanding. Please. Si hace 10 años nos hubieran dicho que se iba a celebrar un congreso sobre nanotecnología y además con una sesión plenaria abierta al público, hubiéramos puesto cara de asombro. Lo que me lleva a reflexionar sobre cómo ha cambiado la percepción de todos nosotros, de la sociedad en general, ante la ciencia y la tecnología. Hoy hemos adquirido conciencia de que no son ámbitos ajenos a nosotros y que sus investigaciones y avances tienen una repercusión en nuestra vida cotidiana. Y en Kutxa hemos sido testigos directos de esa transformación y este Museo de la Ciencia en el que nos encontramos es una muestra viva de ello. Y cuando desde la obra social de Kutxa pensamos en impulsar proyectos de estas características, siempre tenemos como objetivo fomentar la educación y la divulgación científica en un entorno atractivo y estimulante. Y esto no fue una idea que surgió de la nada. Éramos conscientes de que en la sociedad guipuzcoana, en línea con lo que estaba ocurriendo en el mundo en general, existía una especial sensibilidad en torno a la ciencia. Pues bien, dar respuesta a esta inquietud fue una de las razones que motivó la creación de este Kutxa espacio, kutsagunea, y que, como todos sabéis, es una de las líneas estratégicas que Kutxa quiere como respuesta a las demandas que le plantea la sociedad en cada momento. Y si somos fieles a esa vocación, esta obra social de Kutxa, que es este Kutxa espacio, está abocada a permanecer alerta a esas demandas y a esos cambios. Y de los científicos, no solamente apreciamos vuestras aportaciones, vuestras investigaciones. Queremos también que nos trasladéis vuestros valores. Y hoy he buscado en las webs, en las páginas web de Mr. Heinrich y Sir Harald, y Mr. Heinrich declara que una de las cosas que más aprecia es la libertad por poder investigar aquello que realmente le interesa. Y Sir Harald declara 4 religiones, si me permite. El humanismo, el ateísmo, el amnesty internacionalismo y el humor. Y además de pequeño le fascinaba el mecano, lo podéis ver en su página web. Hoy es para nosotros un verdadero motivo de satisfacción acoger este encuentro dirigido al profesorado de Física y Química y a los estudiantes de cuarto de la ESO, primero y segundo de bachillerato, y contar con la presencia de 2 premios Nobel, como Sir Harald y Heinrich, acompañados por el profesor Pedro Miguel Echenique. Y sobre todo quiero dirigirme a vosotros, al público más joven, porque hoy sois estudiantes, pero mañana, quién sabe, seréis científicos, profesores, directores de empresa. En definitiva, el futuro es vuestro. Y en la web del Congreso de Nanociencia se refería a esta especialidad como que es la base de un mundo por descubrir. Y es un horizonte del que conocemos su potencialidad, pero que todavía no casi intuimos sus aplicaciones, aunque ellos nos dicen que todavía dentro de un espacio, un horizonte de 8 o 10 años, vamos a concretarlas. Hasieran esan dudan bezala, gaur hemen debekatua dago ez galdetzea, beraz, denok daukagu gaur aukera paregabea. Gure bisitariek dakiten eta esperimentatu duten guztia beraiengandik zuhurkatzeko. Izan zaitezte beraz ausartak galderak egiten. Eta nire azken hitzak, Pedro Miguel zuretzat, gaur gainea zure eguna bai da. San Miguel eguna, St. Michael's Day, so congratulations to Pedro Miguel. Hasieran aurkeztu zaitut ohorezko lagun bezala, eta egia da. Gauza asko esan dira zutaz, lorpen asko dituzu orain arte, eta dudarik gabe izango duzu aurrerantzean ere. Baina zure laguntasuna, zure lankidetasuna dira gurengandik jaso dezakegun oparirik hoberena. Eta hori, zientzia baino hobea da guretzat, Pedro. Your friendliness is the best gift for us. Mil esker, thank you very much. Gracias a todos.
Tiene la palabra Marian Ocariz, que es la viceconsejera de Educación de nuestro Gobierno, del Gobierno vasco. Eskerrik asko.
Nire agurrik beroena etorri zareten guztiei, irakasle zein ikaslei. Eta agur berezi bat egin nahi diet Heinrich Rohrer eta Sir Harald Kroto zientzialari ospetsuei. Dr. Rohrer and Professor Kroto, I would like to express my gratitude to you both for accepting to participate in such a special meeting. On behalf of the Basque country's government and society, many thanks for being here today with our young students and their teachers to promote the passion for science. We will never forget your generosity. Eta nola ez, agurtu nahi nuke baita ere oso era berezian, aparteko ekitaldi hau ahalbidetu duen Pedro Miguel Echenique, irakasle eta zientzialari. Seguru nago, Pedro Miguelek ez duela ahaztu, duela 29 urte, berriki autogobernua eskuratu genuela, gure hezkuntza sailburu izatea egokitu zitzaiola. Ez dago dudarik, aztarna sakona utzi ziola garai hartan hartutako ardurak, eta handikona ez du etzi zientzia hezkuntza arruntarekin uztartzen, ikasle gazteek antzeman dezaten zientzian berak aurkitu zuen lilura berbera. Hoy es un día especial para el Departamento de Educación, Universidades e Investigación del Gobierno vasco, al que tengo el placer de representar. En nuestro país es excepcional poder realizar un acto de características tan singulares como el de hoy. Un acto con todos los ingredientes necesarios para colmar los más ambiciosos deseos de cualquier responsable de política educativa. Tenemos con nosotros a 2 investigadores de primera línea mundial, ambos galardonados con el Premio Nobel de Física y de Química respectivamente. Un premio que en el mundo de la ciencia evita la necesidad de cualquier otra presentación. Quienes lo reciben integran indiscutiblemente la primera línea de la vanguardia de la investigación científica en el mundo. Hay que agradecer muy especialmente que los dos investigadores que hoy nos acompañan hayan aceptado participar en un encuentro directo con estudiantes de enseñanza secundaria y con su profesorado para tratar de transmitirnos la irrefrenable seducción, la atracción que la ciencia y la investigación produjo en sus vidas, para transmitirnos la belleza que esconde la ciencia. En estos momentos, una de las tareas primordiales del sistema educativo debe consistir en despertar la curiosidad por conocer, que está en la base de la ciencia. Los avances científicos nos han permitido progresar en nuestro bienestar hasta las altas cotas de que hoy disfrutamos, pero resulta indispensable seguir avanzando y no lo lograremos si no despertamos ese interés en una parte muy importante de nuestros mejores estudiantes. Pero el sistema educativo cumpliría su función de forma muy parcial e imperfecta si nos conformásemos únicamente con despertar en nuestros jóvenes la pasión por la ciencia. Queremos un desarrollo científico que vaya acompañado por un desarrollo ético equivalente. En la sociedad que queremos, progreso científico y valores deben avanzar cogidos de la mano. El incremento del bienestar social debe venir acompañado de un incremento equivalente de justicia y libertad. Queremos una sociedad con mayor bienestar, pero que sea al mismo tiempo más libre y más justa. Solo así encontrará el desarrollo científico su plenitud de significado. A los estudiantes que estáis aquí os ha correspondido un privilegio por poder protagonizar un encuentro de estas características. Hoy habéis venido a un espacio singular, el cuchaespacio de la ciencia, y es que la generación de conocimiento también tiene que ver con la divulgación científica y tecnológica que se realiza en centros como el que hoy nos alberga y que nos enseñan muchas cosas. Hasta el siglo XX, la ciencia investigaba fundamentalmente aspectos centrales de la realidad, lo que se puede ver, tocar, pero desde hace 100 años la ciencia abarca también lo que está en los márgenes de la realidad, lo más pequeño y lo más grande, las bajísimas y altísimas temperaturas, las velocidades que se acercan a la luz. La realidad es mucho más amplia de lo que imaginábamos hace un siglo. Por eso, queremos despertar en vosotros la atracción por el conocimiento, por la ciencia, por la investigación. Estamos convencidos de que quien sea arrastrado por ella nunca se arrepentirá. Diréis que es pronto para saber si vuestro futuro profesional estará ligado a la investigación científica, pero sabed que el conocimiento que adquiráis nunca será en balde. La ciencia se ha convertido en algo esencial en la vida de todo el mundo y cada vez debemos tomar, como simples ciudadanos y ciudadanas, más decisiones en las que interviene la sabiduría y, sobre todo, la actitud científicas. La ciencia nos puede ayudar a mejorar nuestra sociedad, no solo para que haya más bienestar, sino también para que sea más democrática. Ahora tenéis una ocasión que ojalá no sea única en vuestra vida: confrontar vuestras dudas con 3 personas que en un nivel de excelencia han hecho de la investigación científica su actividad principal. Sé que habéis trabajado preparando vuestras preguntas y que sin duda estaréis expectantes y también un poco nerviosos. Ahora es vuestro momento. Aprovechadlo y muchísimas gracias a vosotros y a vuestros profesores y profesoras por vuestra participación. Eskerrik asko.
Mil esker, bioi. Muchas gracias por estos bellos, profundos y motivadores discursos. Siempre hemos encontrado en el Departamento de Educación del Gobierno vasco apoyo a nuestras ideas. Vaya pues las gracias por el continuo apoyo que vamos a seguir encontrando en el futuro. Como estamos en Cuchaespacio, me parece de justicia referirme de manera especial a la cucha. Oíamos ayer en la espléndida intervención de Heinrich Kroto el valor de la curiosidad, la importancia de dejar volar la imaginación para explorar y para encontrar seguramente, como ha pasado siempre a lo largo de la historia, caminos inesperados para solucionar problemas que hoy nos parecen imposibles. Esto es la misma idea que Rohrer cuando habla por la libertad de creación, la libertad de seguir lo que su instinto y su imaginación, apoyado en los anteriores, le digan. Esto es precisamente lo que la Kutxa y el apoyo de Kutxa, una empresa, permite al Donostia International Physics Center. Ha sido patrono desde el comienzo, siempre ha financiado nuestras necesidades de manera generosa. Si hubiésemos pedido más, sé, y nos lo han dicho, que también lo hubiésemos encontrado, y nunca nos han pedido investigar en lo que ellos quieren, lo que a ellos les interesa. Siempre han dejado la libertad como criterio fundamental. Este es un valor fundamental en el mundo de hoy y yo quiero hacer un especial reconocimiento a la Kutxa de parte del Donostia International Physics Center y también del CIC nanoGUNEk, porque hoy puedo anunciar aquí que la Kutxa también se va a incorporar a la Junta de Socios del CIC nanoGUNEk y en su momento el director general Pitarque con los directivos de la Kutxa articularán la forma. Y ya con esto, ahora vamos, esto me recuerda, va a hacer una broma, algo que luego diré, ya que un filósofo francés decía que la ciencia es lo que el padre enseña al hijo. Pero la tecnología, obviamente, tal como estoy yo funcionando aquí, es lo que el hijo le enseña al padre, porque nosotros no estamos. Entonces, no, sigo hablando, pues, ¿no? Sí. Sigo hablando. El siglo XX es el siglo de muchas cosas. Es el siglo de los 2 genocidios tremendos que han causado sufrimiento a millones de personas. Es el siglo de los derechos humanos. Pero por encima de todo, el siglo XX es el siglo de la aplicación de la ciencia y la tecnología a satisfacer necesidades humanas, a reducir su dependencia con la naturaleza, a reducir la dependencia de ideas oscurantistas y fundamentalistas. Y es el siglo del triunfo de la ciencia y de la tecnología. El triunfo de la ciencia moderna es fruto de una combinación exitosa de 2 realidades. Por un lado, la realidad abstracta de conceptos y de imágenes que surge de la búsqueda de coherencia interna que aportan las matemáticas y, por otro, el test del experimento. Esta combinación es europea, es griega, con Arquímedes como pionero. Y ahora ya vuelvo aquí a mi charla. Esta ha sido una improvisación larga, como uno tiene la costumbre de andar por muchos sitios. Estoy bastante tranquilo, con un cierto nerviosismo, porque veo en la audiencia hijas de amigos míos que sé que me machacarán como las hijas vuelvan a casa y digan que a Echenique no se le ha entendido nada. O sea que esto lo tienen que entender todos y todas. Es el triunfo de la ciencia y la tecnología, por lo tanto, y ahí ven algunos logros tecnológicos, pero el siglo XX, este triunfo de la ciencia y la tecnología, en una palabra, lo que ha hecho es reducir el sufrimiento, limitar la dependencia, ha hecho nuestra vida más humana. La ciencia es parte esencial de nuestra cultura. En mi opinión, el edificio conceptual de la ciencia moderna es la obra cultural colectiva más importante de la humanidad. Pero además es la que nos puede permitir, lo señalaba ayer Harry en su charla, en acuerdo con Obama, nos puede permitir solucionar los grandes problemas que como colectivo tenemos: energía, hambre, medio ambiente, crecimiento de los fundamentalismos y de la intolerancia. No lo solucionaremos con menos educación, con menos ciencia. Necesitaremos más ciencia y más educación. Porque vivimos en tiempos exponenciales. Sí, años que hemos tardado en alcanzar un mercado de 50 millones de personas. En la radio, 38. En la televisión, 13. En la Internet 4 y creo que en el YouTube, o no sé cómo se llama, 2. Número de dispositivos en la Internet en 1984, 1.000. En 1992, 1 millón. Hoy, 1.000 millones. 2.700 millones eran las búsquedas en Google en 2006 cada mes. Hoy, 31.000 millones. Tiempos exponenciales. El conocimiento científico se duplica cada 2 años. Esto quiere decir que alguien que empiece la carrera de ingeniería hoy, al acabarla tiene la mitad de su conocimiento obsoleto. y refleja que para el futuro lo importante son las personas, las habilidades de las personas. Y por eso, aunque todo el mundo lo dice, pocos lo practican. El sistema educativo es esencial y el sistema educativo tiene que transmitir, como ha dicho bellamente nuestra viceconsejera, la pasión por aprender, la pasión por conocer. Y los profesores que sepan despertar el amor por la materia son los que serán exitosos. Claro que para eso hace falta, en mi opinión, menos leyes, menos regulaciones, menos codificaciones. No es tan difícil lograr una buena educación, es cara. Hace falta tener profesores formados, informados, bien remunerados y bien considerados socialmente. Estoy seguro que aquí tengo bastante acuerdo con algunos y además lo siento de verdad. Es bonito, a mí me gusta mucho la historia de cómo Annie Sullivan enseñó a leer a Helen Keller. No tengo tiempo de desarrollar toda esta historia. Pero lo que hizo es despertar en Helen Keller la pasión por aprender. Cuando Helen Keller descubrió que las palabras tuviesen significado, aprendió exponencialmente. Y ese es el tipo de educación que queremos para nuestra gente. La ciencia, por encima de todo, es creatividad. Por lo tanto, solo puede ser enseñada de verdad haciéndola junto a los que la hacen bien. Learn to swim by swimming. Es la forma. Y además se basa en los que nos precedieron. Por eso es tan importante lo que hace cada uno de los científicos. Somos eslabones en la cadena. Lo dice bellamente André Gide. Todas las olas del mar deben la belleza de su perfil a la retirada de las que les precedieron. O Newton. Porque esta obra colectiva tiene personalidades singulares que contribuyen de una forma diferente y abren nuevos caminos. Newton lo dijo, si he visto más lejos que otros hombres es porque me ha aupado a hombres de gigantes. Y los que trabajamos hoy en física de la materia condensada, en nanotecnología, nos hemos apoyado en gran parte en las espaldas de los dos gigantes que tenemos con nosotros, que es Kroto, Rohrer y Kroto, Premios Nobel de física, Rohrer y de química, Kroto. Fíjese lo que decía Demócrito, es una bella frase la de Demócrito, todo está hecho de átomos indestructibles, inmutables, cualitativamente indiferenciados. Sigue. Solo la razón puede llegar a los átomos, nunca a los sentidos. Lo que Rohrer nos ha proporcionado al mundo, a todos, es un dedo atómico, como explicaré, que permite, Demócrito estaría estupefacto, escribir hoy Donostia International Physics Center, tenemos que hacer una para nanoGUNEk de esto, Chema, con átomos de plata y oro sobre una superficie de cobre. Sabemos perfectamente que cada una de estos que aparece en el ordenador es un átomo individual, Por cierto, ahora yo quiero ponerles un vídeo con otra perspectiva sobre los átomos de un gran pensador mexicano y necesito la ayuda de Igor porque no he sabido integrarlo. Harry, you are not the only one with problems with the computer. If I will have had your problem, I will need about 10 days to solve it, or maybe 10 months.
Los átomos destruir el mundo, si viera que sí.
This is Cantinflas, Cantinflas, átomo axerdena salsa.
Los átomos son una cosa que usted naturalmente no comprende porque son cosas que no se ven.
No los conozco.
Son partículas, señor, que vienen siendo, agarrando una fuerza que al frote, o sea, más bien, ¿usted conoce las chinampinas?
Ah, son chinampinas.
Mucho más peligroso, señor.
Como la dinamita.
Como la dinamita. ¿Cómo compara usted la dinamita con el átomo? Si el átomo son partículas indiferentes, ¿verdad? Que al rozarse vienen haciendo una fuerza que pudiéramos llamar más bien porque, mire usted, son cositas pequeñísimas, ¿verdad? Que una vez conjuntas es la palabra lo dice, la apotología de la palabra. Por ejemplo, dinamita.
¿La qué?
Apotología de la palabra, dinamita. Tiene usted la 10ª parte de la mitad de la partícula del átomo. En cambio, el átomo es una cosa tan fuerte, ¿verdad?, que al estallar viene agarrando, porque el roce, lo más raro de la cosa, que al usted soltar el átomo, viene cayendo poco a poco y parece que no roza. Pero llega el momento, ¿verdad?, que explota y entonces la frotación del mismo átomo hace que la partícula desintegrante se unifique uniformemente, pero al mismo tiempo desintegrada. Entonces ya como quien dice, explotó. ¿Usted estuvo en la prueba de DIPCk?
No, yo estaba aquí.
Yo también, pero digo, ¿usted vio en los periódicos?
Ah, sí.
La prueba que hicieron, una isla, ¿verdad?, rodeada de arenas, animales, ¿verdad?, y luego echaron la bomba. Viene bajando la bomba, hasta que toca, ¿verdad?, el suelo. Agarra el agua, la levanta 80.000 pies de altura, y ahí están los animales.
¿Y qué pasó?
Nada, ahí están, con mucho calor, pero ahí están. Pero en cambio la dinamita es una cosa inflamable que no es comparable con el átomo de la partícula.
Ah.
¿Entendió?
Pues sí, algo entendí. Pero hay una cosa que no he podido...
Ya ven que hay distintas perspectivas sobre el átomo. Realmente tengo curiosidad por ver cómo los traductores han traducido este trozo. Pero hoy... a la 19, ¿no? Hoy, independientemente de las opiniones de Cantinflas, gracias a Rohrer y a Wiening, tenemos una forma de manipular átomos individualmente. Esto se basa en una propiedad de la física cuántica que voy a intentar explicárselos de forma sencilla. Heinrich me ha pedido que lo haga, pero en cualquier caso, si no me entienden, le vuelven a preguntar, que seguro que a él sí le entienden. Si ustedes van al frontón, esperan que la pelota rebote del frontis. Sería una catástrofe que algunas rebotasen y otras no, sobre todo para las apuestas, naturalmente. Pero con los electrones, algunos pasan y otros no. Y los que pasan dependen de la resistencia a su paso, el número de los que pasan. Y la resistencia depende de la distancia. Entonces, si nosotros hacemos que esto es lo que se llama el efecto túnel. En la física clásica, el electrón llega y es repelido. Pero en la física cuántica, aquí abajo, cuando la onda llega, parte pasa y parte es repelida. Esta propiedad permite usar puntas de tamaño atómico. Y esta es una foto que Heinrich me ha pasado, es de él. Un átomo, para que se haga una idea de los órdenes de magnitud, es en la punta de una aguja como un grano de arena es en el Cervino, en el Matterhorn. Entonces, si ahora, en vez de utilizar, si ustedes mueven el dedo por aquí, o vosotros movéis, y os encontráis con esto, tenéis que subir el dedo para seguir moviendo. Por lo tanto, el movimiento de mi dedo me refleja la topografía de la mesa. Esto es exactamente el microscopio túnel. Cuando el dedo es atómico y yo voy pasando, el movimiento de la mano me refleja la topografía a escala atómica. Es lo mismo que si se pasan el dedo por la cara, van viendo su forma. Si presionan un poco ya no ven la piel, van el hueso, viene el hueso. Este es un vídeo para explicar esto. Fijemos ahora, igual la luz, demasiada luz, fijemos ahora la punta atómica y aquí se establece una corriente de electrones. El número de electrones es proporcional a la distancia. Entonces, si yo mantengo la distancia constante y nada cambia, el número de electrones es el mismo, por lo tanto no tengo que cambiar la distancia. Ahora, si me encuentro con unas protusiones atómicas, tengo que subir la punta porque si no la distancia sería menor y aumentaría el número de la corriente. O sea que mantener la corriente constante me obliga a mover la punta de forma que me dé información sobre la estructura atómica de la superficie. Es el dedo atómico de Rohrer utilizando la propiedad cuántica del efecto túnel. Esto permite incluso no solo estudiar la topografía, sino estudiar las propiedades de los electrones, etcétera, y se registra en la pantalla del ordenador. Pero es que incluso si lo acerco más, puede incluso tener la capacidad de mover átomos individualmente. Y así la primera vez que se hizo, me parece que escribieron IBM, naturalmente, se hizo, y ahora aquí ven nano escrito. Este es el fundamento del descubrimiento que, usando la física cuántica, Rohrer, buscando respuestas piezoeléctricas o lo que les cuente luego, llevó al Premio Nobel, que es uno de los premios Nobel más rápidos desde el descubrimiento hasta su concesión. Permitió, por ejemplo, resolver un problema tremendo en física de superficies que llevan años imposibles, donde se colocan los átomos de silicio en una superficie atómica. Para los que crean que sabemos todo, no sabemos casi nada. El tiempo que nos llevó entender dónde se colocan unos átomos de silicio en la superficie 111. Con esto se puede hacer hasta corrales cuánticos y atrapar los electrones en un corral allí eso parece el círculo de Ben-Hur, pues esto es átomos de hierro, los azules, que enredan a los electrones de la superficie de cobre 111, y en nanoGUNEk y en el Donostia International Physics Center nos preguntamos, investigamos sobre cuál es el tiempo que estos electrones están ahí. Es del orden de femtosegundos, 10 elevado a menos 15, esos son 1000 atosegundos, no les dice nada, pero si les digo que un atosegundo es a un segundo como un segundo a la edad del universo, esto ya les impresiona sobre los tiempos que estamos tratando. Con esto también se puede decir naturalmente Happy Birthday, que esto me pasó ayer. La Universidad de Basel le felicitó Happy Birthday Heinrich Rohrer. El fin último de la nanotecnología, en bellas palabras de Henry, del cual surgirán aplicaciones insospechadas. Yo no veo ningún campo en el cual la nanotecnología no pueda ser aplicado, porque la nanotecnología no es más que preguntar a la naturaleza a una escala determinada, en unas condiciones determinadas, y van a surgir propiedades diferentes. Lo pequeño es diferente y poderoso. El objetivo último, por lo tanto, es crecer una nanoestructura dada en un lugar dado para una función dada. No hay mejor resumen que el proporcionado por Heinrich Rohrer. Por ejemplo, colocar una nanopartícula en un cáncer de mama para que, iluminándolo con infrarrojo, libere su energía electrónica y funda el tumor. Nanopartícula, una estructura en un sitio dado, en el tumor, para que haga una función, destruir el tumor. Y ahora paso a otro de los gigantes, a otro de los dos gigantes de hoy, el descubrimiento del fullereno. Son organizaciones del carbono que se creían que no existían y con una simetría bellísima, y por eso Kroto recibe el Premio Nobel de Química. Ahí tienen un fullereno. Esto me parece es Canadá, ¿no? I think. And this is taken from... El carbono tiene diversas formas. Uno puede tener grafito, uno puede tener ahora grafeno, uno puede tener diamante, uno puede tener fullereno, estructuras insospechadas que se creían que no podían existir. Los fullerenos se encuentran en el laboratorio, pero se encuentran en el espacio, y es precisamente por su interés en el espacio donde Kroto encuentra estos fullerenos. Y esta definición de nanotecnología, otra, los químicos han sido capaces de crear moléculas cada vez más grandes. Ahora tienen que ser capaces, o se están creando moléculas para una función específica. La alegría de la simetría, la belleza de la simetría, lo refleja bellamente este vídeo que está tomado de la lección, creo, de la lección Nobel de Harold Kroto. Además, Harold Kroto está envuelto en un proyecto fascinante, que es GEOSET, Global Strategic Outreach Science, Engineering and Technology, que es, usando la capacidad de la tecnología moderna, han visto los tiempos exponenciales, hacer llegar a todos los lugares del mundo la ciencia y la tecnología, de una manera agradable, de una manera divertida, de forma que se transmita la pasión por el conocimiento, pero además de forma que también los conceptos y principios esenciales sean transmitidos, porque sin ellos un entendimiento profundo, a fundamental understanding is not possible. Entonces me toca, había pensado ahora yo hacer de introductor y presentarles, pero me encuentro con un dilema, el mismo dilema que se encontró el gran visir del mongol cuando fue derrotado por el gran Khan. Esto lo he tomado de una lección preciosa que se dio en Trieste hace muchos años, a Life in Physics. Es cuando Salam, Premio Nobel de Física, tenía que introducir a Heisenberg y a Dirac. Y contó esta historia del gran visir, cuando el gran visir del mongol derrotado tiene que servir el té al gran Khan victorioso y a su señor derrotado. ¿A quién sirve primero? Si sirve al gran Khan, decapitado. Pero si sirve al gran visir, probablemente decapitado por la noche. La solución fue muy sencilla. La solución fue poner el té entre los dos y decir, no es mi propósito servirles a ustedes, solo un rey puede servir a otro rey. Only a king, myself, another king. So instead of introducing them, I just give the floor to them so they introduce themselves and say whatever they like. So please, Harry. Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah, we'll just try it. Okay. Yeah, I know. Okay, it's a pleasure to be here. I hope this will work. It's not my computer and it's not the presentation I was hoping to give, but we'll do the best. And also, it's a new version of PowerPoint, which fortunately I have seen for 5 minutes. Well, I thought I'd let you know what I wanted to be, which is Superman. But I unfortunately found it difficult to fly. So this is me when I was a little boy, and I put this on. And let's see whether I can go. That says S on it. And I used to want to play, win at Wimbledon, but I kept losing. But one thing I did was I did graphics. I'm just hoping that these hyperlinks work, which they may or may not do, but we'll see, because they're on a. It's taking a while. It should be essentially instantaneous. Okay, so another thing is there's young people in the audience. I want you to realize that scientists don't just do science. Believe it or not, my main interest is art and graphics, and this is about 8 feet high. This is a picture of me when I was a little kid. This is a painting of a colleague who ran a rock group at Sussex University, and these are some of my drawings. I fell in love with this film star when I was a kid, about 18, I think. And so I thought I'd show you also my first award was not for science. It was for this design, and it was in the Sunday Times, and this is what I used to look like. Now, most of you young people are young and beautiful now, but you're going to look old and decrepit like me one day. So enjoy your youth whilst you may, because it will not last. I can guarantee that's the case. But at university, when you go, there are many, many things to do. Not just science, or if you go into history. I got involved with the university magazine, and I did the covers of the university magazine, which was called Arrows at the University of Sheffield, where I was a student. And these are some of my designs. Nowadays, I do a lot of logos. This is at Sheffield. They've named a sort of building after me because they've named buildings after Nobel Prize winners, and there have been quite a number from Sheffield. This is actually a design for the Kroto Research Institute, and it's one of my favorite ones. I did a workshop with little kids in Australia, and this is my buckyball workshop in Australia. I'm trying to sell it to the Australian soccer team at the moment. So these are a lot of things. Now, I did this drawing at school. I only got good for my drawing. I think it should have been very good. But anyway, I got very good for my maths. And here are some other designs. This was on the London Underground and covers and stuff like this. And this is a drawing at the age of 13 of Stockholm Town Hall. And this is where the Nobel Prize is awarded. I didn't know what the Nobel Prize was all about. I was just interested in the architecture. It's a wonderful brick building. Okay, this is architecture. I'm not sure what that is, but there you go. And so there's a lot of things that I've done. And I do encourage you not just to be one-dimensional. If there are other things you want to do, then you'll find there's plenty to do. Okay, so let me see what I can get out of that. The other thing I was fascinated by this stamp. I don't know whether it will work. Okay, it doesn't work. I'm sorry about that. But let me probably won't go because it's not set up for this. But this is an interesting stamp, and I'll try and show you why. And I must have been fascinated by it. But you notice that, in fact, it has negatives, opposites here. Yin and yang are involved. And I painted this stamp 3 times as a student. I'm hoping that this works. Let's just see. Yeah, it seems to think it's going to work. At school, I also acted in a play. And I thought I'd show you this picture. It's Henry V. It's a very famous play by Shakespeare. And I'm the handsome guy on the right in this picture. And I usually tell young people, if you've got the chance of staying in the arts and being an actor, or be a scientist, you should really stay a scientist, because the other guy now looks like this. And you see, I'm a lot younger than he is. But in fact, Ian McKellen and I were in the same year at school, and we acted in this play, and I obviously taught him how to act. He's learned very well from me. But I believe he must have been here last week. Is that right? There's a picture. So I thought, as I discovered walking through the streets of San Sebastian yesterday, I discovered that he wore the same shirt as me. So I thought, I too had better do the same thing. So, believe it or not, in 2 weeks, you've had, Ian, who is almost certainly the greatest Shakespearean actor of my generation, and you've got a couple of Nobel Prize winners who are in San Sebastian. That should augur well for San Sebastian being, the city of, I think, honored by the EU. Anyway, that's a picture of Ian as Magneto. I tried to teach him Maxwell's equations, but he wasn't that interested. But I would say that Maxwell's equations, if you're a scientist, or if you're not a scientist, are perhaps one of the greatest achievements of science. That's really quite interesting. Now, I'm going to jump out of here and see whether I can see anything else that might be of interest to you guys. I thought I'd show you, let me jump on to, I will show you this, because, let me try and pull it down again. Microsoft have put everything in different places. The other thing about science, don't just be focused, because people think, I want to do this, I want to do that. Just do what interests you. Don't think about what you are going to achieve. Just go down the road of science and find it interesting. And I did some radio astronomy, and that led to an interest in stars. Now, stars like this are stars that make carbon. All the carbon in your body was inside a star like this. The red glow that you see on the outside is actually carbonaceous dust being blown out. So you're all aliens. Every single one of you came from outer space, believe it or not. If you want to see an alien, look at the person next to you. If you want to see an alien, look in a mirror. In fact, a lot of the carbon is still out in space. And in fact, there are a lot of people that I think we should send back out into space as well. So we discovered C60, not because we wanted to discover C60, but we were interested in how carbon was processed in a star. And so there's another lesson, and that is that this was discovered by accident, okay? So people say, how do you win a Nobel Prize? Well, it turned out, do a very boring experiment that nobody else is interested in. If you do science, which is so obviously important that 100 people are doing it, you've only got one chance in 100 of doing something original, because the others have already done it, okay? So just do things that you personally are passionate about. It doesn't matter whether it's science or art or something else. Do it personally, something, and if nobody else is interested, you've got a better chance. I mean, nobody, even my colleagues were not particularly interested in this particular experiment, okay? I also don't try to do something important, because I know a lot of people who, they want to win the Nobel Prize. I didn't even think about it. If someone had said you were going to win the Nobel Prize in 1984, I said you're out of your cotton-picking mind, okay? But then the year later, we made this amazing discovery, and then it may be on. But I know a lot of people who try to do something important, and I'm sure Heinrich will agree with me. We were just doing things that interested us, and something spectacular happened, totally unexpectedly. And so we were both awarded the Nobel Prize. It's not necessarily a good thing either. There's pros and cons. There are disadvantages and advantages. And I'm sure the main thing I can assure you is don't do anything to win prizes. Certainly don't do science to win prizes, because you probably will look around for something that's important, and it turns out that it's impossible in science to decide what is important. It's impossible because, and I'll tell you why, if it's important, You don't know before you've discovered it. It's only after you discovered it that you find, wow, it's important. You understand? Because if you already knew before you discovered it was important, it can't be as important as it would have been after, and you didn't know. You understand? So that's unfortunately the way science works. So we discovered C60 and many other things of this nature. Okay, so now let me just try and jump out and find something else. The nice thing about science is that our philosophy is quite different from everything else. Now, one thing you must be careful about in this particular place is to be too nationalistic, too provincial. What is good about science is shown in this picture, that these are my colleagues. I used to have a bit more hair. This is me, believe it or not, okay? But my colleague here is from Syria, from Ireland, the UK, from Spain, from Holland, Taiwan, Mexico, and India. Science is international. It doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter what religion you are. It doesn't matter what nationality you are. In the sciences, we're very different from everything else. We speak the language of science. And the interesting thing about science, it has nothing to do with what is in your head. It's about what's out there. And if someone in Japan looks at your data and says, I don't believe this because I get this result, and if someone in South Africa or USA gets different results, you are wrong. The only truth, as far as I'm concerned, is about evidence that other people can look at and say, yeah, I think you're right. And I don't accept as true anything that is for which there is no evidence. And that is what science is about. But the wonderful thing is that all of these are my friends, okay? And they all are from different countries. So if you join the scientific community, you have friends outside. Now, I know there are some issues in this area in the Basque Country, but it's a provincial attitude. And if we're going to survive in the 21st century, we've got to work together to survive. We can't do it by ourselves. And so, let me go on because I think that there may be some other things. I thought I'd show you, I retired from the UK, and, this is, what are you doing, Bill? Stop! It's working differently from what I would expect, but here we go. I went to Florida State. I worked for 37 years in the UK, and let's see whether this works. Oh, maybe it does. Okay. I went to Florida State, and I thought I'd show you my new co-workers. Now, this probably won't work. Oh, yeah, it does. Okay. These are my new co-workers at Florida State. And I went to a game, and they lost by 28-0, 28-0. And as one of my friends said about a game that the local team lost, they were very lucky to get 0. All right? This is Joe Namath, one of the famous footballers, and I'm a big fan of American football. Okay, right. Let me get out of that and show you my actual co-workers here. And we can get down to here. Oops, it is. There they are. These are, again, you'll see from the US, from India, from Ghana, and from Italy. Again, international. And I wonder whether you know who this guy is. This is considered to be either the greatest physicist or the second greatest physicist of the 20th century. That's Paul Dirac. How many of you have heard of Paul Dirac? How many of you heard of Einstein? Well, I think a lot of you. Okay, all right. Well, Dirac is considered to be essentially either equal of Einstein or certainly there for his real equation for quantum mechanics. And if you are young people, whatever you are, if you want to know what I consider to be the greatest achievement of the 20th century, it is quantum mechanics. There is another interesting thing. You had Newton on there, who made the statement, if I've seen further than others, it's because I've been standing on the shoulders of giants. Now, this particular quotation is not as altruistic as you might have thought, because it was written in a letter to Robert Hooke, who complained that Newton had plagiarized his work. And it turns out that Robert Hooke was a very small guy. And so in actual fact, it's just the opposite of altruism. It's a rather nasty little jibe at poor old Hooke. And in fact, it is thought that Newton destroyed every portrait of Hooke when he became president of the Royal Society. There is absolutely no image of Robert Hooke today. People have been searching and have never been able to find a picture of him. And he was a very clever guy. But anyway, we do have Paul Dirac. But he's part of my group, but he doesn't come in very often. Okay, let me just finally say a couple of things. People think that the C60 molecule is my favorite one. And let me go to here. But in fact, this is my favorite molecule. It's nitroethoethane, and it's my dog, all right? And it looks like this, made of carbon, hydrogen, okay? And I was a spectroscopist, and you look at the spectrum, and the interesting thing is you saw the dog shakes its head, okay? And looks at its tail, all right? Not only that, my dog actually does even more things. In fact, hopefully it will come down here, because the hydrogen atoms undergo internal rotation. Now, the reason there's a red nose, it's been drinking too much, you see. And if you've been drinking too much, you know what the problem is, that you've got a problem here by drinking. And for a dog, the most important thing is to see a lamppost. Okay. Now, the reason for showing you that is that molecules are molecular machines. This is a picture of hemoglobin in your body. All right? And ATP synthase is another molecule that's in your body, and I'm hoping this comes down and shows you. Now, this is a fantastic machine, and I hope it runs. It may not do because it's not on my machine. No, it's not going to do that. Okay, let me go back. Okay, sorry about that. It doesn't look as though it's going to work. But in your body, these are electric motors, driven not by electrons, but by protons. As you sit here, these electric motors are spinning, making ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is the energy store in your body. And I tell you, if I'd been your age, okay, and seen these molecular machines when I was your age, I would be working on these, because these are tremendously exciting systems for the future. This is an interesting one. It opens and shuts, okay, just like an electric motor. So another thing that we've made, I'm hoping this will show, is, it won't go. Sorry about that. Let's forget this, okay, and let's go on. And we've also seen some systems that move like this, okay? So the chemistry of the 21st century is not just molecules that sit there, but molecules that do things, molecular machines. And that's, I think, quite exciting. Let me just go to a little bit further down, and then, if I can do that, okay, because I want to finish off with some issues that I think are important. And I'm not sure I can see them. Okay, because this is not the presentation I had intended to give, but I wanted to say something about science itself, which is that if you go into science, I think I want to show you this. I hope it's the correct. Oh yes, I think it's here. It's not quite the one I wanted to show you, but because of problems. If you go and become a physicist, I don't want you to make more effective atomic bombs, okay? I don't think that's what science is about. I think science is about discovering the universe. And if you go into evolution, you look at Darwinian evolution, you realize that what you're designed is to survive. And therefore, if you go into physics and make bombs, I don't think that's what evolution has driven you to do, because it doesn't a good idea, okay? if you're going to chemistry, I don't think you should make more effective napalm. This iconic image of a little girl burnt by napalm is terrible. I think you should really work in chemistry for humanitarian purposes. I don't think you should make better landmines. There's images on the web, on YouTube and other places, of a little boy, little kids, with only one leg, on crutches, playing soccer, because one leg has been blown off by a landmine. I think if you go into science, try to ensure that the science that you do is used for humanitarian purposes. This is Raymond Heatley. I'm pretty sure none of you know him, but he did all the experiments personally on penicillin. He is the person who deserves credit almost more than anybody else for penicillin. And let me show you, hopefully this will work, something that none of you have ever lived through. This miracle molecule, penicillin, in 3 weeks cured this girl. That was in 1942. In 1941, she would have died. All right? I want you to look at that. Because bacteria are evolving that are immune to antibiotics. If you go into the sciences, recognize we need the smartest young people possible, because there is a distinct possibility that we're going back to this situation. All right? We desperately need young people like you to try to solve those sorts of problems. Unfortunately, you've got people like this as your icons, and he's a Scientologist, okay? But young people like this, Jim Heath and Sean O'Brien and Yuan Liu and Jonathan Hare, were the young people who were involved in our work. I think you now have to forget, I know you are proud of being Basque, but I'm not proud of being anything other than a member of the human race. There are some members of that human race that I don't think I'm very proud of. And I set up global educational outreach to reach those people. There's just one particular thing that I want to find, and then I'm going to finish, because I do feel that I want to show you this. Okay, let me just look at, bring this down. It's difficult because this is not the presentation I wanted. Okay, click that away. Click, this is not, I can't read this, so. I just want to bring this one down.
Which one?
Okay, oops. Oh. What are you doing to me? All right, okay, we got that one before. I wanted to show you this one. Yeah, it's just moving. There's one thing to realize, that these are some people that are famous, but I wanted to tell you that basically this is Maxwell. He was your age when he did some of his great work. And Einstein was 17 when he started to think about what it would be like to travel at the velocity of light. And so it's really young people. These are the physicists who created quantum mechanics. And Darwin was 24 when he really developed his ideas. It's young people like you who actually make the breakthroughs, and old people like me who sort of, we're really past it. We need your help. And with that, I'll finish with what I have to say. Thank you very much.
You don't need any more, no? Okay, now, a good friend of the Basque Country. Leave it on.
Because there may be some answers on.
Okay, yeah. A good friend of the Basque Country and of our lab is Dr. Rohrer. Heinrich is a member of the International Advisory Committee of nanoGUNEk, and we had the privilege that 9 years ago he gave the opening lecture of the Donostia International Physics Center. We have been learning from him since and enjoying his company. And as you will see, he has a fantastic capacity to summarize things. So in 5 minutes, he's going to tell us his life.
Okay. Good afternoon. You heard now a lot about science, and in particular about the human values of science. I just will talk a little bit about me, how you develop into a scientist. I think everybody of you can do that. That's why I tell you about me. I'm nothing special. It simply happened. I grew up on the countryside, somewhere in Switzerland, and enjoyed my youth. I had to work at home. That was during the World War II years. I was born in 1933, so I went to primary school, and then afterwards to secondary school. So we had to work on the farm. You had to do all kinds of things, but there was always time to have fun. And I think that's one of the most important parts in life, even of a scientist. Never forget to have fun. I had my fun mainly with the Boy Scouts and with my colleagues. And part of the fun is doing things which are not allowed, because they are the ones you enjoy most. That's probably part of the young people, of boyhood, probably also of girlhood. And so we always enjoyed things. Once, you see, you made nonsense in, I think it was November or December. Everything was frozen. And then, of course, you want to play the big guy, the big boy. And so we went on a pond. And I thought I was very clever, but I wasn't that clever. The ice was not as strong as I thought. So I fell in. But somehow I got out. I already could swim a little bit. But I couldn't go home with my wet clothes. And it was very cold. So we made a fire and tried to dry the clothes. We somehow, let's say, we progressed with the drying process, but then finally some part of the clothes also went on fire. So, of course, I had then to tell the story at home, and I didn't get the beating, but I didn't get any sympathy for whatever. And, of course, at that age, then finally, I think I was good enough in secondary school, so my mother and my sister sent me to gymnasium, to high school. There I learned Latin and also Greek. I think I was reasonably good at that. But I think the major motivation for doing it, and that was to impress girls. You see, when you speak Latin at this age, and also Greek. And then I also tried the violin. At the violin I had to give up after 2 years. It was completely unsuccessful. But that's how I went through my high school years. I was a reasonably good high school student, and not brilliant, but good enough to finish and do all the things I had to do. And then I had to make a decision what to do afterwards. For a long time, I thought studying old languages, you see, that has a certain romantic touch. But then you grow older, and maybe the romantic part of life gets a little bit less romantic. And so I decided to go into a technical profession. I was good in mathematics, I was good in physics, I was good in chemistry, I was good in Latin, and I was good in Greek. I was awful in French and German and history and all these things. So it was more or less clear, either old languages or technical. Now, old languages didn't already then thought that's not really the future. And so I went into the technical, I went to the ETH, the Institute of Technology in Zurich. And when I had to write down, I didn't even know whether I would go to engineering. I didn't have any idea how to go about. But then I had to decide there for a specific department. And that's why I decided for the Department of Mathematics and Physics. Now, I had the intention of studying mathematics. But then after 1 year, I already knew that very abstract mathematics wasn't my strength. So I decided for physics and for experimental physics. And I think it was a reasonable good decision finally. Now, you see, I didn't have some type of I forgot the word. Okay. I didn't really know what to do, but I think I chose the right thing. And I think also for you, it doesn't matter what you do in particular. Of course, don't study French if French is not made for your mouth, you see. That's something very difficult. Don't study something where you are really, where you do not enjoy things. Enjoy it. But what counts finally is not that you really have chosen the best things for your abilities. What counts is that once you have chosen it, you have to stick to it. And you have to do the best you can do. Otherwise, you always keep changing. Your mind, you have then to focus your mind on your choice. And I think that's everywhere the same. Be it in politics, be it in business, be it even in marriage. You see, once you have chosen a companion, you have to try to stick it. You have to make an effort to stick it. Sometimes it is an effort, sometimes it's less of an effort. But I would say that's my real message to you. It's not a matter of the best choice. It's the matter, what counts is that once chosen, you stick to it as long as you can and do the best. And then I'm quite convinced all of you, or most of you, will make it to the top, whatever you imagine is the top. The top is simply to work as good as you can, not better than others. You see, competition is a big word nowadays, but competition is completely useless. You have to do the best you can, not do something because somebody else does something, or try to be better than the other guy or the other girl. Simply always try to do the best you can. And then I think you will be the best for yourself. That's important. Only you yourself count, not all the others. You can say it in different words. In science, you have to do what you think is worthwhile doing, not what other people think is worthwhile doing. And so you are the center of your life. You are not the center of the world, but you are the center of your life, and simply stick to it, and then you can see the others move around you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, both Harry and Heinrich. Ahora vamos a tener un descanso de media hora en que todos vosotros podéis tomar el café con ellos o la Coca-Cola o lo que sea y charlar con ellos, con todos los que están aquí. Estamos a vuestra disposición. En media hora volveremos aquí, donde ha habido una selección al azar de un montón de preguntas maravillosas que habéis hecho y ellos intentarán contestar. Bueno, eskerrik asko guztioi eta jarraituko dugu hemendik ordu erdi batera. Eskerrik asko.
Bueno, hasiko gea, orduan, biografiari buruzko galdera batekin. Eta zenbakia da, hirugarren galdera ahalmen ikastolak egindakoa. Hirugarren galdera ahalmen ikastola egindakoa, han daude. Aurkeztu zure burua, eta gero egin galdera mesedez.
I wouldn't understand.
Más despacio.
Kimikoarentzat. Zientzialari bezala ze modutan lagundu zizun zure aitaren lantokian lan egiteak?
I will translate if you want.
Arazoa dago mikrofonarekin.
As a chemist,
Could I have a list of the questions?
Yeah, of course. But we are not in English.
I will translate.
No. So now, then I can read the questions. Who has a list? Who doesn't need it? You see.
It's better if I translate, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, because it is not the one.
That's impossible.
Okay, as a chemist.
Thank you.
How much did it help you, the work of your father?
Can you hear me okay? Yes? Well, my father was a refugee from Berlin, and I was born in the first month of the war in England, and he insisted that I do well at science and maths. So I had to do what I was told. Now, I know that's not a good thing for you guys nowadays, but I was a good boy, believe it or not, okay? So I did science, although my main passion always has been art and graphics. So I was good at science, it was good, I can earn a living, I teach, and I ended up doing very well at science, but my main interest is art and graphics. But my father, if I didn't finish my homework, I stayed up till midnight to finish it. And if I didn't finish it by midnight, he finished it off for me. But I had to go until then. So that was my upbringing. It was quite tough. And that's my attitude. As Heinrich said, I just now do everything to the best of my ability. I think that's the most important message that you can learn from either of us. And I'll tell you one thing. One student, I rang him up. I said, look, if you put in one more piece of work, you'll get an A. He called me up and he said, well, what have I got now? I said, you got a B. He said, that'll do. Won't do for me, okay? It shouldn't do for you either. Just remember that. You never put in a second-rate piece of work.
Thank you. Next one, please.
Venga.
Very good.
La número 14, Axular, Bigarren Hezkuntza Institutua.
Mi esker, aurkikuntza berriak egon dira fulerenoek organismoetan dituzten eragin kaltegarrietan edo arlo horretan? Mi esker.
It has been... You want me to translate? Igual es mejor. Harry? It has been any research on the possible bad consequences of fullerenes for the body?
I'm not familiar with that, but I will say that any technology can be used for the benefit or to the detriment of humanity. And I think we're in a very early stage because it sometimes takes a long time to work out what are the good things and the bad things. As far as the fullerenes are concerned, it's a chemical like every other. If you drink benzene, it kills you. If you drink too much alcohol, it kills you. It's so the same is true if you eat C60. I don't think it'll harm you. But at this stage, I think it's be a long time before we actually know
What is the question?
Highly positive in medical areas or not.
Next one, please.
Ok. Urrengoa, 84. Instituto de Educación Secundaria, Lasarte, Usurbil. 84. Pregunta 84.
¿Qué les dirías a los jóvenes de hoy en día que desean emprender una carrera en el difícil mundo de la
por favor,
ciencia?
por favor, más alto el micrófono. De nuevo la pregunta, por favor.
¿Qué les dirías a los jóvenes de hoy en día que desean emprender una carrera en el difícil mundo de la ciencia? Gracias.
What would you tell to youngsters of today that are deciding or considering a career in the world of science?
Yeah, I think I already said it. Do what you think is worthwhile to do. That's the only thing which counts.
Well, I would reiterate that. I mean, the point is that, however, science and any really hard work, it only pays off when you put a great effort into it. So even though it's difficult, if you're interested in it, just dive in, and what you will find is because you're passionate about it, you will do it probably better than most other people. Without that particular interest in it, you will not do it particularly well. Do something that you find is interesting. Even though it's hard, don't give up.
Beste bat aterako dugu. 127, Miguel de Unamuno ikastetxea. 127. 127, Colegio Miguel de Unamuno.
Research is said to be a long process which many times that is not even successful. What is it what makes a scientist so determined to keep up investigating even if you are not getting any results? Thank you.
Research is a long process, and many times the answers and the benefits is very little. What is what drives a researcher to keep going and in spite of that?
Yeah, I think that's like in any other job. You see, you want to do something, you want to achieve it. And so you have to try hard. It might not work the first time, it might not work the second time. That's then a decision whether you want to give up or not. Depends a little bit, or it depends also on how important you think something is. And that's why the first question as a scientist is always, what would it change if I could do it? What would I really get going if I could do it? And only the second question is, how could I do it, you see? And then you have to work on that. But then you have to make a decision eventually. If it works, it's fine. If it doesn't work, you have to make a decision. Do I want to continue or do I not want to continue? You see, as a scientist, every day you have to make 10 or 20 decisions. And a decision always means deciding, not proving it. You see, you don't know everything, that's why you have to decide. If you can calculate it on one side and on the other side, then you can say, okay, that's better than this one. But that's not always the case. That's very often not the case. So of course you have to have a hunch. You have to know about things. But you never know the answer, whether a decision is right or not right, before you have not worked on it. You don't know it beforehand. So that's, even a scientist has to decide. And that's a little bit the big problem nowadays. Politicians do no longer want to decide. They prefer to ask a scientist about their opinion. And then they put the opinion of a scientist, put it down as the truth. And that's never the case. So in politics, in society and so on, you have to make decisions. And a decision always involves something you are not 100% sure. Otherwise it is not a decision. I think you have.
Okay, I just would add to that. I hope you can hear me. That there are as many ways to do anything, and particularly science, as there are scientists. And there are as many ways to learn as there are students, and as many ways to teach as there are teachers. So in a sense, you have to do the way that you found successful in your life.
Take it out.
And in my case, I just do what interests me. I don't even think about whether it's important. It just has to be interesting. And I've discovered that even the most mundane and simple, even the most, can you hear that? Even the most mundane thing, if it's just a little bit interesting, just follow it up, because it might turn out to be important. But even if it's not, you can make some success. And if you get to a brick wall, well, that's a point where you just have to, as Heinrich says, make a decision to go on to something else. And science is tough. When I started as a young scientist, I told a friend of mine who was a fantastic scientist, I said, it seems to me like 4 out of 5 of the experiments I do don't work. This fantastic scientist says, that's bloody good. All right? He said it's maybe 9 out of 10 don't work. So you keep going. And I don't know what it is. It's something about being someone who just decides to do the best they can. And just do something, this is puzzling. I seem to be the sort of person who finds everything puzzling. If I don't know how it works, I try to find out. The problem is that today, young children who are really puzzled as they're small, that gets killed by the problems that they can't find out how things work. They don't know how the mobile phone works, they don't know how the TV works, they don't know how the CD works because it's so small. So you've got to jump over that as students, and when you get to university, get to there and work out how our world works. And you find that it's interesting, but just keep going. And if you do that in science, you can get a good job, you can get involved in teaching students, and you can write books and things of this nature. And you can do all the other things as well.
Urrengo galderekin jarraituko dugu, nanozientziei buruz. Ikus dezagun. Eunda, 38, Nazaret zentroak egindakoa. 138 del centro Nazaret.
Los avances en la nanotecnología harán que algún día el propio ser humano y sus máquinas sean capaces de crear vida. Teniendo en cuenta las diferentes opiniones que hay en el mundo, ¿podría llegar a haber polémicas morales acerca de los nuevos avances en la nanotecnología para manipular los átomos a nuestro antojo?
Yo no le he oído. ¿Puede poner el micrófono más alto, por favor?
Los avances en la nanotecnología harán que algún día el propio ser humano y sus máquinas sean capaces de crear vida. Teniendo en cuenta las diferentes opiniones que hay en el mundo, ¿podría llegar a haber polémicas morales acerca de los nuevos avances en la nanotecnología para manipular los átomos a nuestro antojo?
So the new advances in nanotechnology, they are going presumably to change the world a lot. And do you think there might be some moral problems about the use of the new advances in the future? Moral problems.
I'll start the answer to this. I mean, in a sense that all technologies will have negative and positive aspects. And it's up to society to decide how it uses the technologies. Science is independent of, basically, it doesn't have good or bad. It's the way the world works. So if we discover how the atomic bomb works, we have as a society to decide not to use it. Unfortunately, politicians are incapable of working in this way. This is a big problem for society. I have no doubt that nanotechnology, which is really only chemistry in the 21st century, will have a possibility of tremendous benefits, medical or otherwise. But if people get hold of it and decide to use it to the detriment of society, then that will be a possibility. And that's more serious today than it's ever been, okay? I want to move that on to the problem in society at the present time. 1,000 years ago, if you were unpleasant and nasty, you could kill only one person with a knife. In society, we have maybe 1 to 5% of society who are seriously mentally disturbed, okay? In the old days, if they wanted to kill people, they could only kill 1 or 2 at a time. With the Kalashnikov, you can kill hundreds at a time. With an aeroplane, you can kill thousands at a time. That these people are dangerous. What makes the situation dangerous today is that now we have the atomic bomb, and as Einstein said, we can kill a whole city at a time. So society now has to say, let's get rid of these atomic bombs and take them out of the place of this small number of people who want to damage society, and this will continue. I don't see that in any time soon we will reduce the number of people who want to destroy us. But we as a society have to make sure that the weapons of mass destruction are not available to this small number of people. Unfortunately, somehow politicians are incapable of understanding this. And it's up to you, young people, to make sure that the politicians that you actually elect in the future get rid of atomic weapons and make sure that the dangerous technologies that can kill not just cities but even countries are not available to that small number of people who really, for various reasons, can be sent by old men to kill other people.
I will use the privilege of moderator to ask you about this distinction between society and science, because yesterday you beautifully said how much you admire Rohrer for having given up a certain aspect of science in 1944 and getting away from Los Alamos. Yes. So he didn't wait for society to decide. He decided himself. Yes. Would you like to expand on that?
Yes, the greatest man I knew personally, and I wanted to show it, unfortunately, for various technical reasons, I wanted to show this great man. He died at the age of 97. Joseph Rotblat was a fantastic physicist. In 1939, he was to leave Poland with his wife. That day that he was to leave, his wife got appendicitis and had to go into hospital. He arranged for her to come out in 10 days when she was okay. He left for Liverpool. Unfortunately, Hitler invaded Poland and she was never seen again. So he lost his wife this way. He went on to Liverpool and then to Los Alamos. He was told he had to work on the atomic bomb because of nuclear weapons, and he decided, okay, he'll do it. But then when it was clear that Germany did not have an atomic bomb, he left the project. When it was clear that it was not necessary, the atomic bomb was not necessary, he as a scientist, as a human being, a humanitarian, left that. He then spent basically the rest of his life working for the control of nuclear weapons, the Non-Proliferation Treaty with Pugwash, and got the Nobel Peace Prize for his work. He, more than anybody else, worked to stop the proliferation of nuclear weapons. Unfortunately, it is mainly politicians who took this technology out of the hands of the scientific community. Most of the scientists I know, almost all the scientists I know, wanted to get rid of it. But unfortunately, the war was still on, and the science actually completed the job. Joseph Rotblat walked off this project before the bomb was completed because he felt that it was his sort of humanitarian attitude. And he said something which is wonderful. He said, "Remember your humanity and forget the rest." I think this is a wonderful statement which I give to you as young people to be a motto for the future.
Seguimos con una pregunta del bloque de opinión. La pregunta 134, 134, Mutriko, bigarren hezkuntza institutua. 134.
Zein izan daiteke ikerkuntzaren etorkizuna krisi sasoi honetan, eta Euskal Herrian?
Well, this question is for me. Well, I will erantzuko dizut erderaz. El futuro, como han explicado muy bien los dos premios Nobel, ya no es lo que era. No somos lo suficientemente sabios para adivinar qué es lo importante. Entonces, en este momento de crisis, para la crisis concreta ya no podemos hacer nada. Podemos hacer cosas para que estar en condiciones diferenciales a la salida de la crisis. Y para esto la receta es fácil, unos pilares sólidos en ciencia, tecnología e innovación y sobre todo en educación. Por eso que he dicho antes de tiempos exponenciales. Y en Euskal Herria como en los demás sitios, porque nosotros somos pequeños, pero en lo que hacemos tenemos que estar en vanguardia. Porque aquí uno no puede hacer ciencia de segunda, porque si es ciencia de segunda ya no es ciencia. Y en ese sentido yo creo que estamos dispuestos a aceptar que se inviertan cantidades ingentes de dinero en solucionar el corto plazo, como se está haciendo, incluso para ayudar a salir a los que nos metieron en la crisis. Pero sería suicida que no exigiésemos que se invirtiesen cantidades ingentes de dinero en garantizar el largo plazo. La ciencia, la tecnología, la innovación y sobre todo la educación, porque los científicos de mañana saldrán de vuestras escuelas, seréis vosotros que con imaginación, con libertad encontraréis caminos, por caminos inesperados, soluciones a problemas que hoy nos parecen imposibles.
Sobre el bloque de biografía, 15. Azular Lizeoa. 15. galdera, Azular Lizeoak egindakoa.
Denbora izan alduzu ikerkuntzaz gain familiarekin eta lagunekin egoteko?
Let me ask.
I had.
A lot? You have a lot?
I think I don't know what a lot is. I had sufficient time. I never had not enough time. Maybe I could have used more, but as I said, fun is one of the important matters. And I had the freedom to have fun, as long as I kept it somehow under control, my fun. And that's sometimes difficult, but reality always catches up with you. And so working hard and having time for others does not exclude each other.
Okay. I think that's a very interesting question, and I think I would say that it caused me and my family a problem. A lot of the burden in science, and particularly in universities, I mean, I must admit, university you have to teach as well, you have to do research, you have to compete against people who are full-time in industry, you have to do administration. I wanted to play tennis. I also had a family, and a lot of the burden of actually family life was taken up by my wife, who's actually here. And she works now 3 or 4 hours a day, now she's retired, trying to find out where we are. Well, in fact, I get up in the morning and say, where are we and what am I supposed to do, right? Because I don't know, and I try to do this. And so I think it is a problem, but it's a problem that will be in any walk of life, all right? I think the problem in science is, however, that you actually are competing, although you don't realize it. There are a lot of people out there working, and I don't like competition. Heinrich pointed out, very important aspect, I don't like competition. I mean, I played tennis, and I didn't like the competition mainly because I kept losing. But in science, the competition is with yourself. It's what you're interested in. So I think you have to recognize that you do need support of other people, and I was very fortunate to have the support of Marg, my wife, who's here. But I do think that my children lost out a bit, okay? I really do feel that because I worked hard and all these other things, that I probably didn't spend as much time with my children as I should have done. They're fantastic kids, but they lost out a bit. And I think the other thing is that you do have a lot of friends all over the world. And I meet them all the time, and they said, "You remember me?" And they said, "Yes." And I don't remember, but they know me. So in the scientific profession, as you go around the world, you make friends, a lot of them. And there's only 24 hours in the day. And as a scientist and in a university, there's no sleep, all right? You only have 2 hours sleep a night, right? The rest of the day you keep at it. But yes, it's a problem, and it was for me.
Maybe I will ask the general manager of Kroto Corporation if he wants to make a comment. Would you like to add something to that, Margaret?
Yeah, process. Yeah.
Would you like to say? Why not?
Well, I'm not quite sure what to say to that. Certainly it takes up a lot of my time, but it's just been something. I've had a career as well throughout my life, and I guess I've come home in the evening and done a double job, if you like, looked after home and family, garden, house, and things that scientists don't have time to do, or some might have time to do. But I think it's partly because Harry has so much interest in other things, such now as education. At least we can work together now. So things are getting better, I hope.
Gure kongresua aurrera egin dezan hainbeste lanak egin duen Janko Irunek esaten dit nire emakumeari ere galdetzeko, baina ez diot galdetuko, bera nervioso jarriko, alde batetik nervioso behar bada, nerviosa jarriko zalako, eta beste aldetik nik ez dut uste entzun nahiko nukenik berak esan dezaken. Thank you. Please.
Vale. Jarretuko dugu. Nanozientziei buruzko galdera. La número 76. Instituto de Educación Secundaria Francisco de Vitoria. Número 76.
¿En qué se basó y cómo surgió el microscopio de efecto túnel?
Did you? Yeah. In what it was based and how it was discovered the scanning tunneling microscope?
The scanning tunneling microscope was the solution to a problem we wanted to solve. And it was a very obvious solution. The question was only, does it work or doesn't it work? Can we handle the vibrations and everything? So we can keep two things apart of a diameter of an atom or less with a precision of about the tenth of an atom diameter. And it worked. You see, the problem that was a problem of our engineers. They wanted to build a computer on completely new elements. And the question was, how can they make very thin oxide layers which separate two materials but do not completely separate it? Say, electrons could go through a little bit, just a little bit. And these oxides had to be very homogeneous. If they haven't been homogeneous, everywhere the same thickness, then you had spots where you had a lot of current, and that was not useful. And so we wanted to study the structural and the electronic properties of the oxides. And so we used exactly this effect, the tunneling current, which was to some extent bothering, but to some extent very helpful, the key of the whole problem. And what was fantastic, once we decided to take this approach, which was absolutely natural approach, once we decided, we could not avoid eventually to get atomic resolution if you did it right. And I think that's, you couldn't expect it from the beginning. We didn't want to invent the microscope. That just came along with the solution of the problem.
Heinrich, you should tell, what I like most about your discovery is that you didn't expect it to be as good as you, because you had some ideas, but it turned out to be fantastically better than you expected, and therefore you have to do the experiment.
Okay, then you see, you need a very, very fine needle. And we knew about procedures to make fine needles. Others tried this out. And if you would have used such a needle, we built everything for such a needle. You had to have ultra-high vacuum and everything, and then you would have had a resolution of maybe 10 angstrom, 10 atomic diameters. So, and that was sufficient for us because at that time, no other instrument could reach this. And we could, in addition, we could see other properties than just topography. But somehow it was very tough to work with ultra-high vacuum and low temperature. Actually, we started out with low temperature and ultra-high vacuum because we thought it's a very difficult problem, because other people also thought about it and everybody discarded it, that you cannot do it. And once other people think you cannot do it, you get misled that you think it's very difficult. And that's, again, you have to rely on your intuition, not on that of other people. And that's why, unfortunately, we made it very complicated at the beginning, and it took 1.5 years. We played around. And we progressed, but not the way we would like to. And then Gerd Binnig said, listen, instead of making a very fine tip, if you take a simple tip, a sewing needle, if you don't prepare it in a specific way, it always ends with one atom. And this very atom, this very end atom, that gave that atomic resolution. And so, you see, it simply had to go this way. So, you see, the scanning tunneling microscope is something very easy to explain. I simply have one problem. If I explain it and people do not understand it right away, then people ask, why did they really get the Nobel Prize for that? And if they understand it, after 10 minutes, they say, what? For something like that you get the Nobel Prize. That's
Henry, let me continue the line of Harry. You yourself were interested in some subtle questions of quantum physics, never mind the details, like the Kondo problem, for example. I can see in your biography. Would you have imagined that the STM could give answers to this problem? Because now your instrument is being used to things we never thought it could be used, to gain insight into very, very subtle questions of quantum mechanics, precisely the ones you have been interested all your life. Have you ever thought your discovery could be used for that?
No, because I was no longer interested in that. You see. Okay, you see, you have to shift your interests. I think that's important. That's after 3 years, or 4 or 5 years. I no longer was really interested in scanning tunneling microscopy and what you could do. I had my interest in other fields of nanotechnology. And because you always have to realize at some moment there are so many other people who can do much better than you can do. And then you start with something different again. You see that?
Okay, please.
Iritziari buruzko beste galdera batekin jarraituko dugu, ikus dezagun. 133 mutriku berriro, bigarren hezkuntzako institutua, 133 del Instituto de Mutriku.
Zientzia neutral alda, zein izan behar da zientzialari papela gizarte demokratiko batean?
Is science neutral? What should be the role of science in a democratic society? Henry, whatever. Whoever, you go. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah, I think science probably is neutral, but you have to be careful. It depends on how the scientist decides to use the science. Science is just about knowledge, but scientists can actually focus on that part of knowledge which is for the benefit or not of mankind. And I think, obviously, we discussed the atomic bomb, and that's the most sort of dangerous thing we've developed at the present time. So I think it's up to scientists and to the community to actually look very carefully at what scientists and what their motives are. Not all scientists believe the way that I do, and I feel that a responsibility for any discovery I make, that hopefully it is used for the benefit of mankind and otherwise not. But I think it's very important that scientists do get involved in these sort of political or socio-political issues because they understand the technology. Now, I've made the point is that, knowledge cannot guarantee that you make good decisions, okay? But common sense suggests that wisdom is not a likely consequence of ignorance. Yeah. And that's, probably something that I'd like you to think about very carefully. To be ignorant of the dangers of scientific and technology is probably more dangerous than ignorance. And so that I think scientists must be involved in advice. The problem is that scientists see things from every angle. So there are many scientists who have expertise. And if it's a complex issue, it's sometimes very difficult to know how to advise politicians. A famous line by Truman, Harry Truman, was, "Give me a one-armed scientist." Why is that? Well, then they won't say, "On the other hand." Okay? And that's it's humorous, but it's actually something very important about science. Because scientists can't come down and say, this is the solution. They can only say, we think that by and large, we've looked at this complex issue, this is what's happening. They look at global warming, the issues that we face today. They look at the ice caps, they look at the temperatures, they look at the seas, they look at the way things are going, they look at the disappearance of species. These come from all different areas of science. And by and large, the majority of scientists say, we think we've got global warming. The majority of scientists, and 70 to 80% think, I think we might be responsible. We're not sure. It's such a complex problem, okay? And that means that the politician says, I can't do this unless you're all sure. That's not the way science is. Science is about, as I said yesterday, about being sure, but not too sure, right? That's from Walt Whitman, the great sort of American writer. And so science always leaves the way beyond open. It says, we think we've got all these data. We think this is what you should do. Let's go along this way, all right? It's like a football manager. He has a policy and plan. This is the way we should play. I'm not sure it is, but by and large, I think we'll win if we do it this way. I think we have that sort of situation. And it's so serious now, survival, that I think we should just do this anyway, although some scientists are not so sure and others are. But if we're right, if the majority are right, we're on the threshold of a really catastrophe for the young people in the future.
Yeah. Just when you talk about global warming, probably we think more or less we are sure, but not completely sure. Yeah. So we are 95% sure. And the 5% we are not sure, it doesn't really matter if we save on CO2 and whatever it is. So we did it for nothing, but it doesn't harm the world. where if it would be different, so we should do it on the 95%. We believe that we have to do something about it. Then we have to do something about it. Forget about the 5% that's negligible, because it doesn't do any harm. If it would be the other way around, then it would be more serious. Then I think we would have to rethink the whole issue. And unfortunately or fortunately, science, we do not vote in science. Is it like that or is it not like that? From this point of view, science is not a democratic affair. We try to answer the question, is it like that or is it not like that? But we do not vote on it, you see that. We try to find evidence for this side or for the other side. And then we have to decide again on the evidence.
Quizás resumir que lo que se está diciendo aquí es que la buena ciencia, como la buena política, tiene en cuenta los datos y las incertidumbres muchas veces importantes que acompañan a los datos y que hay que huir de simplificaciones unidimensionales. Un ejemplo maravilloso de esta simplificación unidimensional es lo que leí un día a un congresista demócrata al ver cómo algunos republicanos simplificaban el problema del medio de Israel, etc. Y cuando decía, no entiendo cómo estos judíos y estos árabes no solucionan sus problemas como haría cualquier buen cristiano. I just don't understand how these Jews and Arabs don't solve the problems as any good Christian will do. That's an example of not taking into account the complexity of the problem. Anyway, it was a joke, and please. It was Harriman, a Democrat congressman, the one who said that.
Venga, seguimos con una pregunta biográfica. Pregunta 122. Miguel de Unamuno.
What was your favorite subject at school, Kroto?
What was your favorite subject at secondary school, Harian's Affairs Yusek?
I think my favorite subject was not school. And, okay, I liked what you called chemistry at that time, or what you called physics. You called it natural sciences or something like that. This I like most. I didn't like French and whatever. But I didn't have one subject, which was now my big favorite subject. I was very good in geometry, for instance. But I liked sports. And so I wasn't the multi-talent, but I was more or less equal talent, you see, with some dips way down, like French.
Okay, my favorite subject at secondary school was geography. And I think it's interesting because it is an interesting subject, which I then dropped at the age of 15. So really the one that I was best at school. And I actually liked school. We lived in, my parents were refugees and my parents lost everything basically. So we lived in a very poor part of Bolton, the town that I grew up in. And so for me, going to school, I went there as early as possible and played soccer and football in the playground. I stayed there as long as possible. I had extra art lessons because I really loved art, and so a teacher gave me extra art lessons at lunchtime. And in the evenings, I stayed at school and went woodwork and stuff like this. So going home was, the last thing I did, especially as I had to make the fire if I got home before my mother got there. So by and large, I liked school. I wasn't particularly good, but I was pretty good. And so I didn't come necessarily top of the form, but I always came top in geography. And then as time went on, I found that, I was good. I went to university, and then I did extremely well at university. I was so surprised because I thought you had to be smart to get a top-class degree, but I discovered it was basically just the same thing that Heinrich said, do the best you can. Never put in a second-rate job, whatever you do. As I said, I did as much as I could. I did gymnastics because I wanted to play sport. I loved playing tennis, and I played as much of that as I possibly could. And just do other things as well. And in case of Ian McKellen, when he went to university, he was such a fantastic actor at school. He immediately spent most of his time acting in Cambridge with the theatre group, okay? I spent as much as I could on the tennis court and also doing art and graphics. And if I hadn't been good at science, when I got into do science, I said, give it 5 years. I mean, I didn't aim to be a scientist. I didn't go to university to be a scientist. I went to get a degree and enjoy being in science and have a good time there. I met Margaret there. We got married there. We spent 6 years and 5 years. And it was during the 60s, the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. It was fantastic 60s time. Then I didn't go on. Why did I go on? I wanted to do a PhD in science. Why did I want to? I wanted to stay at university. The easiest way was to do a PhD, okay? And then I wanted to live abroad. What was the easiest? To do a postdoc. We went to Canada for 2 years. And then I wanted to go to the States. I got a postdoc at Bell Labs for a year, and they paid me a lot of money. I was pretty happy. And then someone said, come back to England. So I came back to England to a university, and I thought, well, I'll give it 5 years. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to go to night school and do graphic design. That was my main aim, okay? But it worked. And so I waited and waited, and I thought, well, I'm a pretty good scientist now. I'm going to set up my graphic studio. And then, damn it all, we discovered C60, that molecule. Where it there. And it screwed up my life, okay? I was going to set up a graphic studio. And so I spent the next 25 years in this. And then I got the Nobel Prize. Next year, we're going to set up our graphic studio. All right? Because that's what I really like doing most. So, never give up.
Nanozientzi buruzko galdera bat, nahaztuko dugu pixka bat. Sanadiran ikastetxea, 144, 144, Sanadiran ikastetxea.
Kompetentzia handia dago nanozientzia, nanoteknologiaren munduan?
Is there a lot of competition in the world of nanotechnology?
I guess so, but I think this shouldn't disturb you to get involved. Again, competition is not very helpful for anything. You have to have an idea in nanotechnology, and then, or you simply have to do what you think you have to, what is interesting also in nanotechnology. There are so many others, they don't even think about what could be the very issues. So, you see, if there wouldn't be other people working in nanotechnology, then probably might not be very interesting, because, so I think more in terms of that a lot of other people also get involved in nanotechnology, and I do not see it as a competition. And it's always nice if you can perform, if you can come out with something very interesting in a community which is pushing the frontiers, you see. If you are alone, then it's getting a little bit lonely. And
I think it's a question of what you call nanotechnology. The conference we're at is atom by atom assembly. I look upon nanotechnology as atom by atom, molecule by molecule assembly of complex issues from the bottom upwards. Okay? Now, unfortunately, the presentation I wanted would have had this in it. But if you want to know the best example of nanotechnology, it's molecular biology, because you are examples of nanotechnology, right? You've been built atom by atom, molecule by molecule, into a complex, in some cases not so complex, depending on whether you're the president of certain countries, okay? complex sort of organism, and on the basis of a DNA blueprint. And so nanotechnology, in my opinion, is basically almost the whole of 21st century chemistry, molecular biology, materials science, materials condensed matter physics, and all these areas. So it's a massive area. And of course, there are a lot of scientists working in it. But the most important issue, which is what Heinrich said, you go into this, find that area that interests you, look at these sorts of things and say, gee, this is interesting, and just do that. And even though someone else might be working in something similar, what I have found is that somehow there's something else. Very often we've done something and someone else has done some similar work. But it turns out that you've done it differently. You found out something that they didn't. And as an example of this molecule here, okay, we got the Nobel Prize for this molecule. Molecule got the prize, we didn't. It's just pretty, right? It's like a supermodel. It's beautiful, but does bugger all, right? But still, its situation is the following, that this experiment had been carried out by two other groups. They'd done the same experiment, all right? I suggested this experiment to my colleagues at Rice University a year beforehand. And then about half a year later, two papers came out doing the same experiment. But they missed it. They didn't see this. Now, although they'd done this experiment, I wanted to look at this experiment from a different angle, all right? It was something interesting for me. They vaporized carbon and looked at what they saw. And they had this signal. The signal was there for this molecule. But I wanted to do something else. I didn't know about this. And when we did something else, during that experiment, this guy really hit us in the eye. So it doesn't matter really very much if someone's doing the same experiment. Do it the way you want to. And we, a third time, saw this. Not only that, this molecule should have been discovered in 1960s and even the 1950s because you've all made it. Every time you put a flame, every time you light something, you make C60. And it's lost again. So this molecule should have been discovered by any combustion lab. Any laboratory that looks at combustion should have discovered this. So the answer is, even though someone's looking at this particular problem, look at it in your own way if it interests you. Even if a paper comes out, sometimes we're working on something and my student says, look, this has just come out. And I look at it and say, yeah, but we're interested in something else, okay? Look at it in your own way. Look at it from a different perspective. That's what science is, because it's looking at this problem in different ways. So even though there might be competition, and I don't like competition, that's why I don't like sport very much the way it is today. It's not about who's the best footballer. It's not about who's the best footballer. It's not about who's really exciting on the football pitch. It's who's winning. And so you see this violence and unpleasantness on the pitch. In science, you get away from that. You go and don't think about competition. Think about what interests you, and you'll do okay.
About competition, I think we both have the same disliking. Let me phrase it this way. If somebody wants to compete, that's his problem, not my problem. It's as simple as that. If somebody wants to compete with you or against you or whatever it is, it's his or her problem. It's not my problem. So if somebody has nothing better to do than to compete, okay, that's the way it is.
Okay, we had planned to be 1 hour, but let it be flexible. I see there are many more questions to be asked. People have worked in the questions. So if you all agree, I'm sure the Kucha people will agree with me. We continue for another 20 minutes. But I will, in order to make sure that the most questions are being asked, in spite of the fascinating and depthness and beautiful of the answers, we will do it in a faster way. So ask the questions, and I will give 1 minute per each question to Harry, and in order that all the students who have prepared have a point.
You see, that's now the undemocratic way of science. He simply says we do it another 20 minutes.
Well, it's just because I had such a great master in my life. Please.
Oianguren, bigarren hezkuntzako institutua, 141, 141, Instituto Oianguren.
Esaten duzu segurtasuna zaintzearren askotan praktiketan oinarrituriko hezkuntza zientifikoa baztertu egiten dela, eta hori dela eta ikasle askori kimika etzaiela erakargarria egiten. Zein esperimentu gomendatuko zeniguke laborategian egiteko, izan alduzu noiz bait istripuren bat?
Well, you have said that because of security, in practice, some beautiful experiments are not allowed in the schools. No. What kind of experiment will you recommend, and have you had a catastrophe in your lab sometime?
I can't remember, but did I talk about photography? Because I did yesterday. I think one thing that made me a chemist was I did photography in the old ways, okay, with photographic film. And I had to do it's completely chemistry. And in fact, to get one photograph, I had to go through a whole sequence of events of taking the film, understanding what was going on. So that was very important. I spent a lot of time in a dark room to get one photograph and one picture. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, yes, chemistry can be dangerous, okay? You can have accidents, and I've had one or two, but no serious ones. So I think you have to be careful. And one problem today, particularly with chemistry, is that in the schools, you don't do very much chemistry. And to some extent, as Heinrich said, he enjoyed the things that were dangerous and the things that you weren't supposed to do. And in the sense that those were some of the things that excited kids to do things that you're not supposed to do. But just be careful and think about it a bit more carefully. But nevertheless, as a child, I did do some somewhat risky things, okay? But life's a risk anyway. But I survived.
What experiment will you make?
Well, I think do photography. I mean, photography is really full of... I mean, we have a photographer here who will tell you, I think, how much he enjoyed actually the actual mechanism. Now, all you do is you take your mobile phone, you press this, you get a picture. It took me 2 weeks to get a picture before, but I learned chemistry. I learned how it worked. I knew how the camera worked. Today, you take a mobile phone, you have no idea how it works. And so you don't have an appreciation of the fantastic ingenuity that has gone into producing the pixels and the mobile phone. And that's a problem because you don't know how your world works. So chemistry is, in that sense, of the chemistry involved in photography was the way that I got there. So that's the experiment I would suggest you do. And at the end of the day, you get a picture of yourself. And there's a great sort of sense of achievement. Instead of just clicking the mobile phone to get a picture, you've done all this work and you got a picture of yourself.
In spite of being such an excellent teacher, as you have seen, he has never taught. So, él pasa de esta pregunta. Otra.
Hurrengoa, biografiari buruzkoa, Gurutzeta Institutua, 71, la 61, Instituto Gurutzeta.
La fuga de cerebros es un problema constante en el Estado español. Sin embargo, el doctor Echenique cursó sus estudios en Euskadi y se ha mantenido fiel a la investigación en el territorio vasco. ¿Qué le ha llevado a ello? ¿En Estados Unidos no hay más ayuda al trabajo de investigación?
Oh, esta es para mí, Harry, y usaré 2 minutos porque estoy solo. No, yo no he cursado mis estudios en el País Vasco, todos, no. Yo estudié en la Universidad de Navarra, hice el doctorado en el Cavendish Laboratory de la Universidad de Cambridge, después estuve de postdoc, también visité los Bell Telephone Labs, el Oak Ridge National Lab, estuve de fellow nordita en Copenhague, en Lund y en Göteborg, y una vez terminada mi experiencia en el gobierno vasco, he estado 3 años de visiting professor, 2 en Cambridge y 1 en los Estados Unidos. He estado más de 8 o 9 años de mi vida fuera. Yo recomiendo que hay que ir fuera. La ciencia es internacional y hay que ir fuera aunque uno esté en el mejor sitio. Aunque uno esté en el mejor sitio. para que no se enamore de la forma de hacer sus cosas, de sus propias ideas, y aprenda otras formas de aprender, que es muy importante, ¿no? Ahora bien, en mi caso, yo quería volver al País Vasco por aquello, y lo diré, y vosotros lo entenderéis bien, en una frase de Iparragirre: herrialde guztietan tokionak badira, baina bihotzak dio zoaz Euskal Herrira.
Una pregunta sobre nanociencias, nanotecnologías. Vamos a barajear. A ver. Berrogeitabi, Colegio Esquivel, ikastetxea. 42 del Colegio Esquivel.
¿Qué son los fenómenos críticos?
What are critical phenomena? Well,
they are critical. Okay. When you go from one phase to another phase, let's say from water to vapor, or from water to ice, you go, that's a phase transition, you change the phase. Now sometimes when you come closer to the other phase, you have a little bit of one phase of the new one, just a little bit, and most of it is in the old one. And then maybe you have an abrupt phase transition, like from water to ice or from water to vapor. Now if you put everything under high pressure, then you go very, very smoothly from water to vapor. Actually, you cannot distinguish really water and vapor. On one side, you have more water, and then you have less and less water, and you have domains of vapor, and the domains of vapor grow, and the domains of water get smaller. And so that gives rise to quite interesting properties, and that's called critical phenomena. And that was for a while was one of the hot subjects in science. And I like to do it. I had proper equipment or special equipment which could be applied to that, and so I did it for a while.
That's fine.
Well, we are going to have the last question, and then I will summarize the rest of the questions because, well...
Gai aukeratu nahi duzu, Pedro?
Ze gaia, zuk aukeratu. Edo esaiozu jendeak aukera... A ver, Margaret, one number from 1 to 3. Tell me, 1, 2 or 3? 2.
That's nanoscience.
Nanoscience. Thank you.
Aranzadi ikastola, 161. 161 ikastola Aranzadi.
Kaixo. Gordon Mooren legeari jarraituz, 18 batean behin bikoizte dengo dugu txip batean sar dezakegun transistore kopurua. Arazoren bat espero alda lege hori mantentzeko, lortzen ari aldira molekulen tamainako transistoreak?
Well, as you both know, according to the law, or to Gordon Moore's law, every 18 months the capacity of computers are doubling. Do you see any reasons for which can be stopped? Do you think that a molecular transistor can be achieved?
We call it Moore's law. It's no law. It's just a matter of experience. He put all the development down in points, and you can, on log paper, you can draw a line through it, and that's why you call it Moore's law. And so far, over the last 30 years, that's okay. And the reason for it is that all the components, the components you have in an electronic circuit, that's a transistor, that's resistors, that's capacitors, and that's what's this around? That's what are the coils? How do you call them?
Induction coil.
Inductances. You see, they are all scalable. That means if you make them smaller and smaller, they still have the same function. Everything is scalable, and that's why, more or less, with the push of the industry, you can achieve now this how to say, factor of 2 better per year or per whatever. It doesn't apply to everything. For instance, it got more than a factor of 2 cheaper every year. It got more than a factor of 2 faster than every year. You see, that's. But all in all, now I think it will come to an end. Now, at the moment, I would say from the point of view of size of a transistor, the way we think now about the transistor, it cannot become smaller than, let's say, 30 by 30 by 30 nanometer, because you need at least 100 dopant atom or 1,000 dopant atom in a transistor. Otherwise, the property from one transistor to the other fluctuate too much. So I don't know, maybe we can continue another 10 years. Maybe we can continue another. But the future is not more slow after 10 years. So the future is new ways of doing it. Now, there might be various ways. I think probably it doesn't make sense to replace a transistor by a molecule because you do not gain that much, because you need all the current leads and everything around. But you might be able to play around. Once you can play really around with molecules, with macromolecules in a very specific way, you can maybe find completely new ways of computing. And I think that's the future. And Moore's law is fantastic, the way we progressed. But I think we have to think now more about brain cells and not so much about small bits. Brain cells will replace the petaflops. I think there is no way around that. And so we have to concentrate on new ways of solving problems and not on simply making computers from the point of view of flops more and more powerful.
I was going to say the same thing. We already have an amazing object which we don't fully understand. We don't understand a lot of aspects of our brain. And so the answer is much more thinking in different terms, and particularly molecular computing is a possibility, but it's still, as Heinrich said, in molecular computing, you're somewhat limited still to the top-down approach. Can we build it bottom-up? The answer is it's already been done. It's been done by living systems that have actually created a brain, an amazing sort of, it is a computing, it can actually do calculations, right? So it doesn't work the same way as the top-down computers that we've designed. So the question is, can we do this? I think the challenge, it seems to me, is that the brain actually is created in aqueous solution, okay? So molecular biology is built out of amino acid protein building blocks. It's done fantastically well, but the point about it is it's taken millions of years through evolution to develop, to probe how things go. And most of the experiments that life has done have been failures, but we are the result. Well, maybe some would say we're a failure too, but nevertheless, that's the drive. The question, I think, which is challenging for you young people, is can we do bottom-up assembly, nanotechnology, with control? And at the moment, we can't do that. We've got chemists who can make quite nice molecules and things like that, but can we make complex molecules by bottom-up assembly? That's the challenge that, if I were your age, I would take up in the future. Outside aqueous solution.
Just an example which shows it doesn't have to be a new type of brain. There are many, many ways of doing something much more efficient and much cleverer. And I just take an example, the solution of an icing problem. That's a standard problem in science which has to do with a certain type of magnetism. And they made some benchmarks. I think one is 1970, then 1985, and 1998. And they just looked how efficient could you solve a problem. And between the 70 and the 1998, the efficiency was increased by a factor of 10 to the 12, 1 billion times. That's the efficiency per CPU. That's not because you had a very large parallel computer. Now, if you look at the CPUs, the hardware, the speed of a CPU changed by a factor of 10,000. So that brought you an efficiency increase by 10,000. But nearly 10 to the 8, nearly 100 million increase came from doing the problem better, to have completely different new algorithms and so on. And that shows you even with our way of thinking at the moment, we can do a tremendous improvement if we think a little bit longer about how to solve this little part of the problem, this little part, and this little part. So the 100 million, that's fantastic compared to the 10,000 of the hardware improvement, you see. And so that will be the future. So finally, of course, a scientist will dream of not of an electronic brain, but we would dream of using molecules and all this in one way. But there are many different ways of going there, and we probably cannot make or we might not be able to make the real big step, the fantastic step in the next 10 years. Maybe we can, maybe not. I don't know, and I don't care, because that's no longer my business.
Bueno, después de esta pregunta tan interesante y las respuestas, pues yo quiero aprovechar esta última pregunta para hacer una pequeña reflexión y comentario, ya que se ha hablado también aquí sobre el paralelismo masivo que tiene la mente y de ciencia, para decir que la ciencia realmente está empezando. No es el fin de la ciencia, sino el comienzo de la ciencia. Se me permita contarles una anécdota para mostrarles que esto es así, que realmente en ciencia existe algo así como la ley de conservación de la ignorancia, ¿no? Cada pregunta, la ignorancia inconsciente pasa a ser ignorancia consciente, pero cada producto de investigación que merece la pena, cada respuesta que se hace, encierra en sí dos preguntas nuevas, casi la ley del aumento de la ignorancia. Y referente a la mente, en 1997, en Cambridge, se celebró el centenario del descubrimiento del electrón por Thomson en el Cavendish Laboratory. Y allí estaba, ya que se ha citado, Gordon Moore, que dio una charla sobre el electrón. Y entonces me decía la secretaria, amiga mía, que no entendía, porque la máxima preocupación de Gordon Moore no era el PowerPoint ni la charla, era si tenía que pagar o no el hotel en Londres al día siguiente si llegaba antes de las 12. Y esto me dejó perplejo. Y no era porque Gordon Moore no sea un hombre generoso, porque inmediatamente después creó una fundación con su esposa Betty, esto es muy americano, y regaló $5.000 millones. So, esta preocupación de Gordon Moore por pagar el hotel y luego regalar $5.000 millones nos explica que estamos al comienzo de la ciencia y que tardaremos siglos en entender la complejidad de la mente humana. Bueno, y en cualquier caso, yo lo que quiero es decirles a los que no han tenido oportunidad de hacer sus preguntas, que en cierto modo ya las han contestado, porque ellos se han anticipado y demostrando su trabajo y su inteligencia a todo lo que se ha dicho aquí. Todas las preguntas que no han sido contestadas lo fueron por Harry ayer y por Harry y Henry hoy, en sus respuestas globales a los demás. O sea que felicitaros por haber tenido este trabajo tan brillante, haber encontrado las preguntas a los profesores y a los alumnos. Porque realmente, lo mismo que creo que en el año 2006 la persona del año fue el gran público, los protagonistas hoy aquí sois los estudiantes y los profesores que nos habéis acompañado y que nos habéis hecho pasar un rato tan agradable y aprendido tanto con vuestras preguntas y con las respuestas de nuestros dos gigantes. Eskerrik asko guztioi, eskerrik asko hezkuntzari eta eskerrik asko kutxari.